Welcome to the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter. It is 7 p.m. on Monday, November 14th, 2022. We are called to order. Would all please rise for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we approve the agenda, I'd like to introduce Joey Schugel, who's sitting in for Todd Krafke tonight. The agenda has been distributed. Are there any questions, any suggestions for revision to the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Somewhat. Just to point out real quick on agenda, under new business, letter F, the correction from 2022 to 2021 and 2023 to 2022. Just a typo in your packet that those dates are correct, just on the agenda. A misprint.
All right. Considering those two changes, is there a motion to approve the agenda as revised?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The packet is approved, or the agenda is approved with those revisions. Next up, approval of the minutes. The minutes are printed on pages 8 through 9 of the packet. Are there any revisions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved as distributed. We have 4 public hearings tonight. The process and procedures for public hearings are outlined on page 10 of the packet. The format for public hearings include a staff presentation, followed by applicant presentation if there's an applicant present, followed by public comment. Commenters have 5 minutes and should introduce themselves before they begin to speak. So we will jump into our public hearing on the first matter, which is the assessment of unpaid utility charges. We will open that hearing at 7:02 p.m.
Mayor Noel and City Council, I'm here tonight for the public hearing on, the first one is delinquent utility accounts as of May 31st, 2022. You passed a resolution on October 14th stating for me and my staff to send out letters to past due utility accounts, which we did. We also put public hearing notice in the paper of the St. Peter Herald. End of October or November 3rd and November 10th, the notices appeared. What we are asking tonight is the total past due is $13,902.01, of which $7,078.34 is accessible to property owners. What is not accessible is renters. We do not assess the electric portion of the bill. If for water, wastewater, stormwater, garbage, and others, that is accessible to property owners even if there are rentals. So we've sent out notices both to the landlords and to the renters of what their past due bills are. And then we also write off the non-assessable portion is $5,619.33 for the electricity, and any balances below $10 we write off, bankruptcies, and in the case of death, we write those off. So we are here today to see if anybody is from, that we sent letters to, is here to ask or present.
All right. Thank you, Sally. Is there any member of the audience who'd like to make public comment? I don't see anybody. We will, for action, we will consider this assessment under unfinished business. So we will close that public hearing at 7:04 p.m. Next up is a public hearing on assessment of unpaid miscellaneous charges. We will open at 7:05 p.m. And Sally, once again.
Again, Mayor Noel and City Council, we're here tonight for the assessment of unpaid projects and miscellaneous charges for the year of 2022. Assessments, again, we sent letters to everybody, told them of the public hearing. We have assessments for curb gutter sidewalk work that was done on North Fourth Street. And then we have a couple private sewer line and some water line and some sewer projects that we also have done this summer or this year. We have waivers signed by all those owners saying that they know what the assessments were coming and what the assessment amounts were. We also have some charges for lawn mowing and snow removal, and those were billed out through August 11th, 2022. So again, we sent notices to the homeowners, and we put the public notice in the St. Peter Herald for this. So the amount of assessments for curb, gutter, sidewalk, driveway, private sewer, and water line replacement is $77,723.99. And then lawn mowing and snow removal is $1,050.
Okay.
And so, if we have anybody here to
Make
ask.
a comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on this? Seeing no one, we will close at 7:06. Action to consider the assessment is scheduled again under unfinished business.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
you,
Next
Sally.
up, a public hearing on the creation of tax increment financing district number 1-25. It is 7:06 PM, and we will call that open.
And Mayor Noel and council members, I will provide a little background on this. Based on state statute, what this would do is would first be the creation of a district, which would be west of Hy-Vee. And what this would do is establish housing slightly over 4 acres. The district would be created for housing based on a pay-as-you-go district. So that means city would not incur any debt on this agreement. Pay-as-you-go for a maximum of 1.6 million over and/or over 14 years. The amount of tax eligible anticipated for this would be 2.6 million. And the city would be providing 1.6, and this falls in line with what you've done in the past and previous councils have done in the past. Couple things the developer would have to meet to do this. They have to meet 20% of the units, or in this case 12 units, have to be occupied by 50% or less of the area median income. So as of right now today, to kind of give you an example of that, for a median family of 4 in the area is 93,000. So looking at about 50% is around 46,000 or less would have to be met in this case by the developer. And Mr. Baker's here as well to answer any questions.
Did you have anything to add, Ben?
I think he covered most of it, so.
All right. In that case, is there any member of the public who would like to comment on this? Hearing nobody, we will close this hearing at 7:08. Action to consider the creation of a tax increment financing district is scheduled under new business. Our last public hearing tonight is on the Hallett Pond Edition number 3 preliminary and final plats. We will open the hearing at 7:08.
Mayor and members of the council, going from page 49 of your packet, there's a memo and then a staff report and then the preliminary and final plat. So back in 2013, with Shopko coming to town, there was a plat that was approved, and that created, for your handout here, is the area west of which is now Hy-Vee, and that's Outlot A of Hallett Pond Addition. Before you tonight is both the preliminary and the final plat, and that will be called Hallett Pond Addition number 3, as there was earlier this spring an addition made just north of Hy-Vee, which would have been Hallett Pond, the second addition. And in order to build on a lot, it cannot be an outlot. An outlot is not buildable, therefore subdivision was required. There was a conditional use permit held earlier this fall that also required that a plat come forward for this development. So as you can see on the 11 by 17 paper, there is three lots that are gonna be created. The northern lot would be future parkland. The middle lot, Lot 2, would be for the apartment complex. And Lot 3, closest to 3rd Street, would be for a future commercial building. So in that, there's a picture, a bird's eye picture of where the property is. The property is 4.6 acres. The parkland would be just under 1 acre in size. And later in the agenda, we'd actually be looking at resolutions for the approval of the preliminary and the final plat. And the preliminary plat is shown with the aerial photo. And the final plat is the front, which has a white background. It's a little bit more simplified. And then there's 2 additional maps that are attached, and that would show the grading and the drainage, and then the landscaping plan that's proposed. City engineer, myself, Public Works Department has reviewed this extensively, and although we have made many revisions and gone through quite a few, Councilperson Pettis did find over here the easement does not need to go all the way through, as it does not need to go through a building. So we would, later on in the agenda, suggest that the easement stop just short of the building. Otherwise, that concludes staff's report. If you have any other questions, I'd be glad to answer those.
Thank you. Action to consider the adoption of the plats that's scheduled under new business, and so we'll follow up at that time, and we're going to close right now at 7:12.
For public hearing, don't you?
What's that?
Don't you want to open it for a public hearing?
Oh, thank you, everybody. Are there any members of the public who'd like to comment? All right, hearing none, we will close, still 7:12, so thank you very much. Next up, we have time for visitors on our agenda. Is there any member of the audience who'd like to address the council on any matter later on the agenda? Hearing none, general visitor comments. Is there any member of the audience wishing to address the council on any matter whatsoever? Hearing none, we will move on to approval of consent agenda. The consent agenda begins on page 11 of the packet and concludes with the resolution on page 32. The resolution contains the following budgeted purchases in excess of $25,000 to Loggers, Inc. for a 2023 Dodge Durango, metering and technology solutions for $30,300 for 200 water meters. The following employee appointment approved at the wages indicated: Kenneth O'Connell as a part-time bus driver. And the following license applications are approved: a temporary gambling license for Gustavus Ducks Unlimited. That is a correction. It is printed as Pheasants Forever in the packet, but it is Ducks Unlimited. And temporary gambling as well for Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Note that the December 26th, 2022 City Council meeting and the December 19th, 2022 workshop sessions are hereby canceled, and staff is directed to pay account payables prior to December 31st, 2022, following review of this by the City Administrator, Director of Finance, and Mayor, with a disbursement list of the aforementioned end-of-the-year accounts payable for formal consideration by the City Council at the January 9th, 2023 regular council meeting. The schedule of disbursements for October 20th, 2022 through November 9th, 2022 as well. If we have a motion and a second, we can discuss any questions or revisions to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, would you call the roll, please, Barb?
Sure. Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rand?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. We will move on to unfinished business, and first up is adoption of an ordinance amending flood plan regulations. It starts with a memo on page 33 of the packet.
And Mayor Noel and council members, for this one, this is coming back to you. This was not in the body of the packet when you took action at a previous council meeting. However, it was submitted correctly and was on in your workshop packet correctly. So that's why it's coming back for approval tonight. So what this would do is it would be correcting and reinserting section 25-6. And as I said, in workshop and discussion and was published correctly, it just when it came to that council meeting, there was a cut and paste error there.
Thanks. Any questions about the ordinance as presented? Hearing no questions, the ordinance is printed on pages 34 through 38 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Whalen?
Aye.
Councilmember Sherstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
The ordinance is approved. Next up, adoption of a resolution assessing unpaid utility charges. Sally.
Mayor Noel and City Council, I'm here tonight to ask you to approve the resolution to assess property owners for delinquent utility accounts as of May 31st, 2022. The memo begins on page 39 and ends on 40. As I stated earlier, the amount of past due as of May 31st, 2021 is 2022, is $13,902.01, of which $7,078.34 is accessible to property owners. Non-assessable portion is $5,619.33 for the electricity of tenants, and then balances below $10, bankruptcies and death. We do try and collect these accounts before we write them off. After we're 2 months past due, we go through our disconnect and set up payment arrangements, work with the clients to try, or the renters or the homeowners. We continue to send delinquent notices even after that. So, and we send contact of how to get in charge with different services, MVAC, the county, and some other things. So we do try and collect as much as we can. These amounts fluctuate depending upon if there's a business that goes out of business. Sometimes it's a little bit higher, sometimes it's a little bit lower. It all depends. But yeah, we do try and collect, and we will still try and collect this write-off. We'll send it to a collections agency to try and collect those, and then it'll come back to the city if anything gets collected. So we're asking you to pass the resolutions on page 41 and 42, which has a list of past due utility accounts.
Thank you, Sally.
Questions?
Carrie.
Sally, how often in the past few years have you seen, aside from when there was COVID relief for folks, how often do you see delinquent accounts get resolved because they sort of took the recommendation to contact for support?
The last 2 years, there has been a lot of support. One of the nice things, I guess, nice things that we see through COVID, prior to COVID, MVAC and Heat Share and some of those, they just covered the electric portion of the bill. With COVID and ARP funds and some other things that came back, those agencies got funds to cover the water, wastewater, stormwater, which has helped us tremendously. And it has really come through and helped people. So we try and direct them there. Once in a while, they get a little upset with me or us as we start, but then when they take the number and they call, they come back and there's been some good results. So right now, the water portion has, as we talk to MVAC and some of the other ones, is pretty much over. So there's some funds, but not as much as there was. But we are directing people to go to those agencies and get the help that they need, because that's what it's there for.
Thank
So we do have a sheet that we hand out to them and tell them to go, and it can help them.
Thank you, Sally.
Any other questions for Sally? Hearing none, the resolution before us on page 41 calls for adopting assessment for unpaid charges for municipal utilities and writing off of bad debt utility charges. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sherstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Whalen?
Aye.
The resolution is approved.
Thank you.
You bet. Next up, adoption of a resolution assessing unpaid miscellaneous charges.
Again, Mayor and City Council, I'm here to ask for your approval of the resolution to assess property owners for unpaid projects and miscellaneous charges. Again, the memo begins on page 43 through 44. Again, I said the assessments for the curb, gutter, and sidewalk projects on North 4th Street and the private water line and the sewer projects, we do have signed waivers from all of our people being assessed, so they know it's coming, and they've gotten letters also. We've sent them letters with the final amounts. Once it all was finished, then Pete's team puts together what the final cost is. You know, they sign a waiver with, and it's usually a higher amount, and then we come back with what the actual costs were once we get the costs in. So those residents or property owners are aware of what's coming. A few have come in and paid. And then we have some charges for lawn mowing and snow removal. So, and those were up through August 11th of 2022. Again, on the resolution on pages 45 and 46, it has a list of the properties that will be assessed. Again, for the projects, it's $77,723.99. And for lawn mowing and snow removal, it's $1,050 that needs to be assessed. They have the right, we'll send another letter out saying you have until December 16th if you want it to pay it in full, so it doesn't go on your taxes. And then as of that date, I'll send it to the county, and then after that, they have to go to the county and pay and do what they want to do. But again, it shows the years, the rate of interest, and everything else based on our policy of what we'll be assessing.
Thank you. Any questions for Sally? Hearing none, the resolution before us on pages 45 and 46 of the packet. It's a resolution adopting assessment of unpaid miscellaneous charges. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Ray.
Aye.
Councilmember Sherrod.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Our last item of unfinished business is adoption of a resolution accepting 2022 Minnesota Square Park North Plaza 2 project.
Madam Mayor and City Council, here tonight to ask you to approve the resolution on page 48. As you're aware, the construction has been completed down there at Minnesota Square. Nielsen Concrete did an outstanding job for us. They were also willing, as you can tell from the memo, to do a little bit of extra work for us related to the Mason shelter. And so we really wanted uniformity and to match some of the colors, and he was able to do that for us. The change order in the amount of $7207.37 includes roughly $6,794 for the Mason shelter work that was our responsibility, and the remaining $413.27 was for additional quantities that were added to the project as minor corrections. We're asking that you approve the resolution on page 48.
Thank you, Pete. Any questions for Pete? Daryl?
Was there a DNR grant on this one, or is that a different project?
Nope, there's still, this was a little bit different. There were certain portions of this that will be reimbursed through the DNR grant. But not the main plaza. The main plaza portion was from the parks budget.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Hearing none. We have before us on page 48 a resolution accepting 2022 Minnesota Park North Plaza Phase 2 project as completed and authorizing final payment to the contractor. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Ray.
Aye.
Councilmember Sherrod.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Thank you. Moving on to new business, our first item of new business tonight is adoption of a resolution adopting preliminary and final plats for Hallett Pond Edition Number 3, beginning with a memo on page 49 of the packet.
Thank you, Mayor Noel and members of the council. We had a public hearing earlier, and what we'll be referring to first of all is the preliminary plat that is shown, the aerial photo here on the 11 by 17. It's also included in your packet. It is common for preliminary and final plats to be approved on the same evening. It does help with timing. So earlier on November 3rd, the Planning Commission did review and approve this preliminary plat, and it is on page 56. It would be staff's and Planning Commission's recommendation to approve this.
Any questions? All right, as previously noted, we've got two resolutions that we're going to be considering. The first is a resolution for the preliminary plat and then the final plat. Do you have anything you'd like to say about the final plat?
Yep, the final plat will be on the opposite side of the preliminary plat. And just to note that between the east side of the building and the west side of the parking lot, we will cut that drainage and utility easement off there so that it does not run through the building. And so if you want to make that note when you approve that resolution, that way we don't have an easement running through a building. Thank you, Councilmember Pettis.
All right, any questions? All right, the first resolution we'll consider calls for approving the preliminary plat of Hallett Pond Edition Number 3. It is on page 56 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Ram?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Anything additional besides the revision to that easement on this one? All right, or any questions from the council? Hearing none, the resolution calls for, page 58 of the packet, calls for approving a final plat for Hallett Pond, Edition Number 3, with we'll be making a revision to that easement. Do we have to amend the resolution as it's printed? Is there a motion to approve the resolution with that revision?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Called, yes.
If you could say that subject to the city attorney's approval on that language.
Sure. So we'll be approving the resolution subject to the city attorney's review and revision. That's all right on your end?
Yep.
We'll call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Ram?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up is the adoption of a resolution approving execution of a development agreement with BRM Holdings, Inc.
Thank you, Mayor Noel and members of the council. To go along with the preliminary and final plat and approval of the final plat, we have an associated development agreement. And in this development agreement, we have conditions of the plat. And as you can see on page 59, the bottom, and going into page 60, it shows the different facets of the development agreement and those conditions. So there will still be plans that will be reviewed and approved by the city engineer and public works as they continue to come in and get revised, so that's part of that. It is for multifamily residential apartment and parking lot. It addresses fencing. There'll be fencing on the south side of the property to alleviate some concerns from the neighbors to the south, and then a neighbor to the west, which would be the fairgrounds. There'll also be some fencing along that side. Trees and landscaping will go into this project, also along the south and west sides to provide for both aesthetic purposes and screening purposes. This was a very creative way to get parkland into the as part of this project. So lot 1 would be dedicated as park, and in order to get to that park, there is an access easement as shown on the plat prior from 3rd Street. There'll be both the way via sidewalk and a road into a parking lot that will lead to this parkland. Right now, we have a trail coming from the east and from the west that are both paved, but there's a gap. It's because the city does not own that land at this time. With this project, there'll be a paved trail section that will get completed, and then the sidewalks from the parking lot will lead to this trail and also to the fishing pier that's in existence. So there will also be some signage provided, making sure people at 3rd Street know that they can enter this parking lot and go up to the parking lot. So they'll be aware of a park ahead. And it also addresses property ownership and maintenance responsibilities. So on page 63, there's a table that shows the different lots, the area size, land use, ownership, maintenance, and access rights. So it's kind of spells out exactly who's going to own what, who's responsible for what, and who gets access. Otherwise, the remaining portion of the development agreement is very standard. It is a standard agreement. We've done this with 2 projects in the past, the Rock Apartments and the Traverse Green Apartments. So it's very standard for the city of St. Peter to do an agreement like this.
Any questions for Ben? Hearing no questions, the resolution before us is on page 71 of the packet. Let's see if I can get there. The resolution calls for authorizing execution of a development agreement by and between the City of St. Peter and BRM Holdings LLC. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Rand,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next, we have adoption of a resolution creating tax increment financing district number 1-25.
Thank you, Mayor Noel and members of the council. As Joey talked about this earlier, the TIF district, and which is on page 99 of your packet is the resolution. What we're looking at doing is 2 things. Establishing a TIF district, so that's the geographic portion of that. So that would be the area west of Hy-Vee. And then 2, directing the mayor and the city staff to enter into an agreement for this TIF agreement. That TIF agreement would allow for $1.6 million or 14 years, whichever comes first. And it also notes that 12 units need to be designated for half of the area income. This document and resolution were prepared by Shannon Sweeney and Mary Ippel, our Bond and Tax Increment Finance Counsel. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer that. Otherwise, again, the resolution's on page 99.
Are there any questions for Ben? Hearing none, the resolution is on page 99 through, let's see, 100, oh gosh, 102 of the packet. The resolution calls for approving the establishment of tax increment financing district number 1-25 within municipal development district number 1 and the adoption of the tax increment financing plan related thereto. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sherstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Rand.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next item of new business, adoption of a resolution approving a revolving loan for the Redmond Club.
Thank you, Mayor Noel and members of the council. Similar to the Flame loan that was approved not long ago, the Redmond Club is looking to do a central business district renovation accessibility enhancement loan to remodel some old bathrooms. Currently, their bathrooms are not in compliance with the ADA standards. So just with the clientele that's there and just being welcoming of everybody, they're trying to remodel these bathrooms. They'd like to do it this spring. They would be closed for about a month, but they would have restrooms available, some temporary restrooms. So the project is about $56,000. They're asking for $25,000 And with this program, it is a 10-year amortization, but if they make their payments on time, they are allowed to, once it's to $5,000, the balance, that can be forgiven. So that's a neat part of this loan that you guys offer. So with that, that would conclude staff's report.
Any questions about this?
Mayor
Mary,
Noel,
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, what were you going to say,
I
George?
was just going to, Mayor Noel and council members, just a reminder that all loans provided by the EDA to come to council for action.
And one more thing to add, the EDA did recommend approval of this loan.
I was gonna make a comment as a liaison on the EDA. I don't, if you know the layout, or folks watching know the layout of the Redmond Club, there is kind of a step up to get towards the restrooms, and so they've utilized their own funds and then other grant programs to have 2 accessible doors. So it's creative, so you have to kind of go outside real quick and then in. But they're, you know, this is why we do this program, to make these spaces more accessible. And so I'm glad that they're taking on this project.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, on page 105 and 106 of the packet, we have a resolution approving $25,000 Central Business District renovation/accessibility enhancement loan to the Redmond Club to partially finance the construction of accessible restrooms. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Whalen,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Our next item is adoption of a resolution approving a revolving loan for Paddlefish Brewing Company.
Thank you, Mayor Noel and members of the council. There is a startup business that is looking to be funded $25,000 out of the city's revolving loan fund. This is an exciting business opportunity for some young entrepreneurs, and they came to the same meeting, the last EDA meeting, and they are looking to go start a local brewery company in the Nicollet Plaza property. It would be divided into 2. They would do some remodeling. 500 square feet or so would be for the brewery, and then they'd have a glass wall, and then 1,500 square feet for the tap room. As you can see on page 107, their startup costs total up to be about $185,000. The city works with private banks and the applicants, and in this case, because just because of where they were as far as their financial plan, and they did a very good job with their business plan. Both the EDA subcommittee and the EDA thought that the original request of $50,000 should be reduced to $25,000, and then that their private bank would pick up the $25,000, which the private bank, Magnify, did agree to do. Also with this, the EDA and the subcommittee had recommended doing a prime interest rate at plus 3%, just to make sure that the city's in a secure spot. There will also be a 2-year balloon, so after 2 years of payments, we would review this, and it could either get renewed or it could get paid off, and hopefully it would turn to the private market, and that after 2 years of successful business, that the private sector would pick it up. So this would be really only 14% of their entire project costs. The EDA and the city work as gap financing and not entire financing for these types of loans. So I guess with that, the EDA did recommend approval of the $25,000 loan, and that would be on page 110 as the resolution.
All right. So the location of, just for the record, the location of this is Nicollet Plaza, 108 South Minnesota Avenue. Are there any questions for Ben? Brad?
Not really a question, more of a comment just from the EDA meeting. I know the developers here, the business owners, reached out earlier this year with their base plan, and they were they took feedback as far as what was needed, reaching out to the Small Business Development Center, working with Todd, working with Ben to pull this together. I'm really impressed. They could have easily been dissuaded by the amount of work that was required to put this together. But they have a solid plan. Their financials have been reviewed by 2 members of the EDA who are bankers along with Ben. And I think this is going to be a great asset to the community. I think it's a great development we've got going here, and something the community could really use. So,
Thanks. Yeah, Carrie?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Ben and to Todd for really helping guide these new entrepreneurs to, the resources and not discouraging them. Todd and Ben provided great service to them. The Small Business Development Center really helped them put together a very strong, well thought out business plan. So I recommend reading it. It's in the last EDA packet. So this is why we have these loan programs in place to support businesses to be able to get started, get established, and it's that gap financing that is really helpful. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Ben, for supporting this group of entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Carrie. Anybody else? Hearing nothing further, the resolution on page 110 of the packet calls for approving $25,000 revolving loan to Paddlefish Brewing Company to partially finance the startup of brewing company and tap room. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Rand,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Next up, we have 2 resolutions approving purchases of police squad cars to be funded by 2021 and 2022 equipment certificates. Hello.
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. I come to you today just to note a memorandum that was created on page 112 and 113. I first like to discuss, and I'm here to ask for the approval of a resolution that is found on page 114, and that would be a 2023 Dodge Durango from our 2021 equipment certificate. I'm available for any questions regarding that purchase, if there are any.
Any questions? Brad?
More of a technical question, I'm not sure. Maybe Sally can answer it. How are you able to use the 2021 equipment certificate?
Because of delivery dates, we have not used that money that's
Oh,
been
okay.
sitting there. So we are on back order. That's why we're ordering 3 vehicles now, because we can finally order them and get them. So we're probably not going to receive these till mid-23 or later in
Okay.
23.
So it was in the
the
budget, but we hadn't used it yet.
Correct.
So. Great, thank you.
Yeah, the pandemic created a lot of issues, and there are still issues now with really no idea when these vehicles would arrive, if so approved. So it's been challenging the last few years.
Indeed.
Is there a process in place for you to determine which vehicles you're getting, specifically why the Durango versus other vehicles?
That's a great question. There is. It's part of my recruitment and retention plan, primarily my retention plan. So I'm really letting the officers of the department be involved in that process. It's a tremendous thank you, because there is a slight increase comparatively to the Dodge Charger, to the Dodge Durango. There are some officers that prefer the Dodge Durango over the Charger, and they really haven't been given that choice. There was a time where we did make a purchase of a Dodge Durango, and that wasn't too effective mechanically, but we have been told repeatedly that those issues have been taken care of. So many officers wanted to give a try to the Dodge Durango. And so that is primarily one of the reasons, and it was offered in a V6, so I'm also looking at the fuel economy as well. So we're getting away from all of our V8s and going to all-wheel drive V6s. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thanks. Further questions?
And Chief Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a Durango available. and
There's a Durango,
Only
correct,
one
correct.
available at this time,
Yeah,
right?
they are available. That was the first vehicle made available for a police package. They were very resistant to share when the Dodge Charger would be available, but suddenly that came up at the end of October as well. And we were told by the fleet manager for Chrysler that that window would not exist for long because there's such a high demand for a police package vehicle. So there's not much offered when it comes to those special type vehicles for the police. So that was really the sort of process throughout this to try to get those requests in and presented to the council.
Thanks. Further questions or comments? Hearing none, the resolution on page 114 of the packet calls for approving a 2021 equipment certificate purchase. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Ram?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Mayor Lo?
Aye. That resolution is approved. Do you have anything you'd like to mention about the next resolution for
Really, it's very
2022?
similar, other than from a different equipment certificate, and it is a different vehicle. So the resolution found on page 115 would be a 2022 equipment certificate purchase, and that would be for a 2023 Dodge Charger.
Any questions about this resolution? Hearing none, the resolution calls for approving a 2022 equipment certificate purchase. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Ram?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Mayor Lo?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, adoption of a resolution authorizing 2023 equipment certificate purchase of a tandem truck and attachments. Pete.
Madam Mayor and City Council, looking for approval tonight to place an order for a new dump truck chassis, body, and attachments for the upcoming equipment certificate in 2023. As Matt had talked a little earlier, we have quite a few supply chain issues going on with all vehicles that we have been purchasing. The unit that you have before you here has seen about a 10% increase in overall cost. Not so much in the chassis, but the attachments where there's a lot of steel and needs to be fabricated. We're actually looking at 3 different vendors for this purchase. We are looking at a Western Star chassis that would be purchased from Boyer Trucks, a dump body and plow equipment that would be purchased from Towmaster out of Litchfield, and an auto lube system, which is a preventive maintenance issue, and it has worked well on other pieces of equipment that we have purchased and utilized in our system. The unit that we're replacing is a 2001 tandem dump truck, has served the city well. 20 plus years of great service out of that truck. For the wear and tear that it does, it has served us well. The total of $326,043.24 is a little bit higher than the $295,000 that had been placed in the equipment certificate when we first looked at this. And the difference in those two costs, we hope to make up when we receive the other piece of equipment, probably late in the fourth quarter of '23. We will come back and have Unit 45 declared surplus, and we will use those funds either to offset that or put back in the general fund budget. There's a resolution on page 119, and as I mentioned earlier, we are looking at fourth quarter of 2023, which would be October, November, December of next year. Hopefully we would have it in time before the snow falls, and we would then come back to you with surplus declaration. Any questions that I can answer?
Questions for Pete? No questions for Pete. You're in luck. The resolution on page 119 calls for authorizing a 2023 equipment certificate purchase for a 2024 Western Star tandem with attachments. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Rand,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Next up, adoption of a resolution approving execution of a boat landing agreement with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources.
Madam Mayor and City Council, there's an agreement on page 122 through 127. We have worked with the Minnesota DNR on the boat ramp down in Levy Park. For the past 20-some years, we've had a previous agreement with them. With the low water levels that you're seeing down there right now, we noticed some damage to the panels. The DNR is going to come in and fix those, but they'd like to renew our maintenance agreement that provides, the city will complete the maintenance on that. There are a couple changes in the maintenance agreement from previous agreements. It really just states that maintenance has to be maintained. We cannot shut down the ramp for any certain amount of times. We can't prohibit certain commercial activities there, all of which we are supporting right now. And so what we're asking is that the resolution on page 128 be approved, and then we'll work with the DNR. The mayor and the city administrator would sign the agreement and process this forward.
Carrie?
I have a couple questions. So
Sure.
when it says the state shall provide technical assistance, what does that mean?
If there is a problem, say with sand drifting in, they may supply technical assistance on how to solve that problem.
Okay.
And they do come down periodic and work with our staff to look at how everything has been installed and what they're seeing along the banks. Every flooding session that we have along the Minnesota River changes that bank. So they're here periodically trying to make sure that we maintain that boat ramp and facility in a proper manner.
So they might advise the city on what maintenance to do. What are some of those maintenance activities that we're responsible for?
We remove the sand is our main function down there and keep the panels open and accessible for people to use.
Okay. That's
And we
all.
do use that sand to our benefit on several projects that we have had throughout the past few years.
Nice. Thank you.
Other questions? Hearing no additional questions, the resolution before us on page 128 of the packet calls for authorizing execution of a cooperative maintenance agreement for the Minnesota River public access at Riverside Park between the state of Minnesota and the city. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sherstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Rand.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, adoption of a resolution retaining DeWild Grant and Record to prepare an electric improvements engineering study.
Madam Mayor and City Council, back in March of 2001, the city completed a master plan of our electric system through DGR. DGR has been our electric engineer for many years. They have been instrumental in designing not only the Front Street substation, but the Broadway substation and the Sunrise Drive substation. They've been instrumental in making connections for us and allowing SIMPA to make connections for us, both on the north end and on the main substation. What we're asking you to do tonight is to approve engineering to start the first phase of the master planning process and design and engineering corrections of transformer number 1, which we have talked about repeatedly for several years now. And with that, we have an engineering estimate of about $172,000, and that would be broken down into several key areas: preliminary engineering, design engineering, bidding services, construction services, and post-construction services. The estimate comes in within budget of the total project. As you are aware, right now we're looking at about $1 million to replace transformer number 1, replace the outdoor switchgear. We will be moving that inside the main substation at City Hall there. We have completed half of that project already about 4 years ago. And so this would be the second phase of that. We will be reconfiguring bus B and bus C. That is really our circuits that come out of the substation and feed the city. As I mentioned in my memo here, about 33% of the city's load comes through that transformer. So at any one time, should that transformer fail, we'd have to do some major reconfiguring to make the loads distributed through the city. In engineering, and we do have $200,000 in contingencies there, we would have about a $1.8 million project when we're done with design on this, which would take place either in the spring of 2023 or the fall of 2023. We will have to design and implement the changes around some of our higher loads, which mean basically from May to September, we wouldn't be able to take this unit out of service unless a catastrophe hit us, lightning, something to that effect.
Yeah, what
Squirrels.
about lightning?
Yeah.
We didn't get the lightning storm?
Squirrels have tried a couple times this year, but they haven't succeeded. So we have had enough risk-taking from that point of view, and we're ready to make some changes here and keep that electricity dependable for our customers. The resolution is on page 131, and I'm available for questions.
Questions for Pete? Carrie?
Can you remind us of the age of that?
Well, we don't have an exact time of where that was, but we believe it was in the mid-50s.
So it's time.
Yeah, it's about 70 years old, so.
Time to retire
Yep.
for it.
Yeah, it has lasted well. We keep checking the oil, to see if everything is operating the way it should. And it has been performing well, but you're on borrowed time.
Do you attribute that keeping up with the maintenance back to the, the staff members who have taken care of it over the years? Or is it just luck?
No, it's a little both. The main thing on that is changing the oil and keeping up to speed with any of the minerals or any of the other deposits that come through on the oil test to see what we need to do, and just having somebody maintain it all the time. Previous crews have done an outstanding job of that.
Thank you to them.
Any additional questions? The resolution on page 131 of the packet calls for retaining DeWild Grant Record and Associates, DGR, to complete an engineering study for Front Street Substation improvements. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Rand,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up is adoption of the resolution retaining Bolton and Menk to prepare a wastewater treatment plant facility planning study. Pete?
Madam Mayor and City Council, as you're aware, our wastewater plant is about 18 years old right now. We're just getting closer towards the end of our financing of the project, just in time for some additional engineering and reconsideration of how we want to have that facility operate for us the next 20 years or so. Bolton and Menk was the original design engineer on that project and have served us very well. We're asking you tonight to approve Bolton and Menk to complete a facility plan for us, which would set out the path for us for the next 20 years. The treatment process and the biosolids process are two of the main areas that we're going to be evaluating. As I had mentioned, a lot of the equipment is 20 years old. We are starting to see just a little bit of uptick in the required maintenance that we're seeing at the facility. It's not unexpected. We have had a lot of flexibility in that plant. That plant can run from anywhere from 2 million to 6 million gallons a day with very little maintenance additional requirements. And so we're very happy with how it's performing, but it's time to do some of the additional work. We're gonna have to check the media and see how things are going. We're gonna have to perform some pump evaluations, see if any of our hydraulic conditions have changed for us. And also what we wanna do is check our main lift station, which is down on Union Street across the river on the east side, make sure that our hydraulic conditions there are serving us well. And with all of that, the memo is detailed. It'll talk a little bit about each one of those areas. One of the things that we will be doing a UV disinfection inspection. As you remember, we did process a UV system through the Amoresco project. That has been performing well, but we'll take that into consideration with what we've got here just to make sure it meets all the design criteria. We are meeting permit requirements through the MPCA right now, so there isn't a large urgency or any type of urgency from that point of view as we meet permit requirements. What we're asking you to do tonight is to get the process started. This process would start in December and run through probably April or May of 2023, and then we would come back to council and complete a report with you and let you know how things look.
Thanks. Any questions for Pete? The resolution is on page 184 of the packet. Resolution for recalling to approve retaining Bolton and Meg Inc. to provide engineering services for development of a wastewater facility plan. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Knopf.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Our final item of business, adoption of a resolution creating a seasonal position of equipment operator.
Madam Mayor and City Council, as we've talked about at workshop, what we're looking for is a job description approval for an equipment operator position that would work with our streets crew. This would be a 900-hour position that we would be looking to fill, and we have been successful in creating a position without a job description that has a 67-day requirement, and we need just a little more to extend, not only in the spring but in the fall, to do our maintenance programs. The 900-hour position should and will provide for that additional help that we need. It's basically the same job description, except for the Class B driver's license instead of the Class A. Not that we have had trouble filling it with Class A operators, all of them have been so far, but we don't need it for this position in particular, so if we ever run short of applicants, we have a way to get down to where we won't be able to fill that position. There is a resolution, there's a job description on page 137 through 139, and the resolution for approval is on page 140.
Questions for Pete? Hearing no questions, the resolution on page 140 is a resolution for adopting an equipment operator's seasonal position description. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Knopf.
Aye. The resolution is approved. Thanks, Pete. We will move on to the reports section of the meeting. Under the report from the mayor, I am pleased to proclaim National Rural Health Day. Whereas St. Peter and other rural communities in Minnesota are places where people know each other and work together to benefit the community, and whereas rural hospitals are often the largest employers and the core economic foundation of rural communities, and whereas meeting the unique healthcare needs of the St. Peter community requires innovation and resourcefulness that reaches beyond geographic boundaries or demographic challenges, and whereas the healthcare team at Rivers Edge Hospital is recognized for meeting those challenges by offering comprehensive, compassionate, patient-centered care to patients, and whereas National Rural Health Day will be celebrated in St. Peter, Minnesota, and throughout the United States on November 17th, 2022, now, therefore, I, Shannon A. Noel, Mayor of the City of St. Peter, do hereby proclaim November 17th, 2022, Rural Health Day in St. Peter. So, pleased to proclaim this day, and many thanks to all of the employees at Rivers Edge Hospital, to the members of the Hospital Commission, which include some of our city council members. So thanks very much. The only other agenda item, the only other report I wished to make tonight was just to mention the art stroll, which happened this weekend. I don't know if any other members of the council were there to participate, but it was an amazing morning in St. Peter. I think it went from 10 to, was it till 6? Yeah, so I guess it was more than just a morning. But really, when I was going around, I just heard amazing comments from the artists and talking about how much foot traffic there was, what a busy morning it was. And for me, it was great to see the art. It was just great to see people out in St. Peter. So thanks to the organizers and everybody who participated in it. Anybody else go?
It was busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First annual, hopefully they bring it back again.
I hope so, yeah, absolutely. Next up, city council reports. Is there any member of the city council who would like to report on any matter? All right, hearing none. Joey, on behalf of the city administrator.
All right, thank you, Mayor Noel, and council members. First, I would just like to report, which is required by state statute, on the property at Klein Street and North Industrial Park in regards to a potential transaction. At this time, no action has been taken on that. That was on our last, addressed at our last council meeting.
Yep, we had a closed session.
And then, very excited to recognize Mr. Pete Moulton for his election as SIMPA's vice president. And as a lot of you know here, and Pete can maybe talk more on this, is how his impact on the board and has further enhanced our role with SIMPA and our connection. And I think it brings a lot of value to our community to have someone like Pete on that board. So Pete, congratulations on that, and maybe talk about what
Sure.
goes into that.
Well, you guys know that SIMPA is our electrical provider, and we have learned a lot over the course since 1977 when we joined the agency, just to be a part of that organization. They serve 18 communities, which we are about 4% of the total electrical load that SIMPA supplies to Minnesota customers. And so it is a great honor to serve on that board, having served as secretary and treasurer, working my way towards vice president this year. What a great team we have as far as people that are serving on that board and leading our electrical provider down the right direction.
So Pete, how long is the term?
1 year, and they are renewed and discussed with the board elects the officers.
Pete, your expertise is so apparent, and I think you've helped all of us learn so much more about SIMPA, just because you know it, but also because you have this opportunity on the board to really share with us some of the plans for the future and what might be some opportunities and challenges. And so thank you for serving in that capacity and for teaching us along the way, and for allowing us to participate in training opportunities so we can become more knowledgeable.
It is a very growing and changing industry, and if you blink, it'll change, so it's exciting.
Thank you, Pete.
Yeah, thanks for representing St. Peter so very well. Thanks, Pete.
All right, I have a couple other things under reports, but I'm going to take the easy way out and make Pete answer them. So Pete, can you tell us, now that it's snowed, what happens with leaf collection?
We are going to continue leaf collection. The crews are out today, still doing an outstanding job of that. It looks like the weather's going to hold for a while here. We're going to continue picking up leaves. We hope to be done about Wednesday of next week. So we've got still about 6-7 days of leaf collection. Pretty much the raking is done because of the snowfall, but there's still piles. We'll try to get to those. So if you have any questions, just call Public Works, give us your address, and we'll be glad to swing by and get those leaves.
Great. And then could you give us an update on the Broadway and Sunrise roundabout?
I can. As of about 4 o'clock this afternoon, traffic started flowing through the roundabouts, and so those that are hearing this tomorrow, it'll be Tuesday when they hear this, but the roundabout is open. We do have it on our Facebook, site for the city, and we'll have some additional information on the city's webpage.
That's exciting news.
It is.
Well documented on social media. By 5 o'clock, they knew.
All right.
Great, thank you, Mayor Noel, that's all I have for reports.
If there's nothing further, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
It's pretty painless. Stayed out of the way. Right. 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 Been talking about a lot of this stuff for a long time, so